You're on Magic Talk with Oscar today. It is just after 1 o'clock. As Sean Plunkett would call it, the hour of power. It's my final hour on this show today. It's been such a fun time for me. It's my first ever talkback show, so I hope you haven't been pulling your hair out and bleeding from the ears. But we're going to move on to the next topic right now, and you may have heard about this in the news. You may not have. It kind of bleeds through there, but it's about a new statue. It was kind of sculpture, I suppose you could call it, that's been put up on State Highway 5 entering into Rotorua. It is a $740,000 project, which is paid for by Rotorua Lakes Council, the NZTA, and other local funders as well. This has met some criticism, believe it or not, from the Taxpayers Union. Jordan Williams, the executive director and co-founder of the Taxpayers Union, have since put up a roadworks sign reading, and this is a quote, "Monumental waste ahead, cost $743,000 and counting." Joining me over the phone to talk more about this right now is Jordan Williams from the Taxpayers Union. Jordan, how are you?
G'day, Oscar. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, buddy. So can you give me just a quick stance on, obviously from the sign we get a pretty quick overview there, but what is the stance from the Taxpayers Union over this?
Yeah, well, we've got a number of members in Rotorua that have been talking about this issue for some years. It's really been the whole saga of the sign. It was supposed to cost $500,000. It's blown out nearly $250,000. And we understand the final cost is going to be north of $1 million because they've still got to install this fantastic light show around it. It's 12 metres high. Only the government would spend that much money on a statue 12 metres high and then install it 6 metres under the road. So you can actually only see half of it as you drive to it. And it's really just been a concoction of failures. I mean, the original concept drawings, it was going to look marvellous. It looks pretty average it looks nothing like the drawings. And it's supposed to look like flats. It looks more like flames. And it doesn't take much imagination to realise that actually at the bottom of these flames is our taxpayer and ratepayer money. So we had a bunch of members here in Rotorua that wanted to mark the occasion. And so we pulled together with some donors, the money for one of those enormous digital road signs, the sort that the NZTA put around the country during the lockdown, saying "Be kind." And often the best medicine for government waste is actually a little bit of sunshine. So we're just letting motorists know as they arrive into Rotorua and pass this enormous statue how much it costs. And that amount is still counting.
So what do you think is the reason behind putting this statue up? Surely if the Rotorua Lakes Council and the NZTA are willing to spend that amount of money, there must be a good reason behind it.
Yeah, this is we're normally pretty reluctant to take on public art, but I think at the time when so many households are struggling because of the new economic environment, and this has gone 50% over budget, and it's delivered nothing like what the actual concept drawings and what the public was sold. And actually, what's been incredible is the media coverage yesterday, where NZTA and the council said they were going to launch an investigation into whether we're allowed to have a sign. Well, actually, why don't you launch an investigation as to why a single statute goes 50% over budget and no one's ever held accountable. So, NZTA had said that initially they were going to take it down and got all hot under the collar. But when we went back to them, they said, actually, hang on, what rule are we breaking? And how does this differ from the "Be kind" messages, for example? They couldn't cite any rule we were breaking. They said at one point that our message was a distracting message. When we pointed out, well, surely it's more distracting, this enormous statue in the middle of the roundabout, rather than our sign. But so they've since backed down, which is good. But it's really interesting, though, just the way officials react when you actually, as I say, put a bit of sunlight on what they're spending our money on. Because we wouldn't have got involved if it was if it was on time, on budget. It's run 2 years late. It's not what was promised. And it's been quite a big issue. It's got a lot of media attention here in Rotorua. And as I say, our local members were quite keen to highlight it. And it's proven very popular. I was there at the statue. We launched at the sign a couple of days ago, and every 10th car was tooting, and we've had lots of emails from people saying, "Good on you! Can you come to my area and highlight waste on our council?" So, I mean, it's quite a good little summer project.
Are you able to explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old, in the sense of how does a project like this get funding? Where does the money come from, and what is the process of that money being acquired and then spent on something like this?
Well, that's a very good question. And this has been a partnership between the council and NZTA. And they team up with a bunch of businesses. There is some philanthropic money in it, but ultimately the cost overruns have all been borne by the taxpayer via NZTA. And often what they say is that this is going to be something, quite remarkable. No one else is doing this. This was a 3D, it was supposed to be a biodegradable 3D printed statue. I don't know quite how it's biodegradable, if it's supposed to last in the elements.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
That's a head scratcher. But put that. I mean, that's what makes this thing even more ridiculous. Put that aside. I think they actually changed the way the manufacturing process, because it just all turned too difficult. And then there's sort of an element of it's economic development. It'll be local businesses that pull it together. But what these bureaucrats always forget is that every dollar they're spending doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from the very communities that they're supposed to serve. And actually, that $750,000, it'll be a couple of social houses, or it could actually be, here's a radical idea for NZTA, improving roads. We don't need this sort of, what is it? It's not even virtue. It's just sort of spending money for the sake of it. There are really good examples of public art around the country. I'd point to, for example, Wellington Sculpture Trust, where it's mostly philanthropic, and when ratepayers come in, it's matched dollar for dollar rather than sort of officials driving it and trying to create some sort of Rolls-Royce statue that ticks environmental boxes, but it actually just ends up with egg on their face.
So something like this, you mentioned that the project has been going for years, so this has obviously come pre-COVID, this whole, this new world that we live in. Is it a fair criticism to go after something like this that was put into production before COVID?
Well, it was 2 years late. You could argue that this was always a waste of money, and it had got a lot of attention even prior to COVID, because it was supposed to be installed 2 years ago. It's only been installed now, and it hasn't actually finished, because they've still got all these lights to put in and around it. I think there's a little bit more to come. But look, we're not going to make any apologies for being even more relentless in our cause for highlighting government waste, because at no time, in the good times or the bad, should politicians or bureaucrats get away with just wasting money and then dismissing it. And what's been really interesting is that, as I say, the response from the NZTA speaks for itself. The first thing they want to do is try to ban the sign. No, the best thing that could do is all these, because, look, we can put up a sign for something like Transmission Gully and say this is it's going to be about 2 years late and north of $1 billion, $1,000 million over budget, but actually we won't get the same sort of attention. So we do sometimes highlight these smaller amounts. It's not that small, it's still $750,000, because it actually shows that actually the attitude these officials have towards our hard-earned taxpayer money. And if we can just put a little bit more pressure on these guys to think a bit more carefully, maybe when they got to $500,000, when they got to the budget, they thought, maybe we shouldn't be as ambitious with this, but no, they just grab money elsewhere from the roading budget, from NZTA, and just pile more money into this thing.
So do you think that they should have stopped at that 500,000 and just rid their hands of been like, nope, this project's over budget, we're not following through?
Well, yeah, this isn't like a half-built road that you have to finish. They could have said, actually, here's an idea, holding the contractor to account. They could have taken a bit of a bath on it, or alternatively say, you know what, we're going to not have this light show. We can just, put some spotlights on it. We don't need to spend another $250,000, because that's what we understand is coming down the pipeline, on these lights. We've got the statue, okay, it's here, the roundabout's done, the road's open, let's move on to the next project, rather than throw even good money after bad.
what's the end goal here? Do we want a refund, or is the aim to just minimise spending like this in the future?
Well, the aim is to hold these bureaucrats that you've never heard of to account for their spending decisions. And actually that's one of the mission, the mission of the Taxpayers Union is lower taxes, less waste, more transparency. This is about those latter two. The more we, it's really hard to gauge success in an organisation like ours, but I've had former cabinet ministers say to me that sometimes when officials would come with really dopey ideas, they'd say, what am I going to say when the Taxpayers Union ask about this or expose this? And similarly, we've had official documents, it was actually in this case, it was in the arts, that one of the potential downsides if we do this is we could get criticism from the Taxpayers Union or media attention. Well, that's great. That's exactly what we want officials thinking, because it's encouraging the most important question, which is this a good value for money? If this was my own money, would I be spending it on this? And I venture to suggest the fact that this artwork has been so poorly managed, is so over budget, and actually so controversial in Rotorua. The toots and thumbs up we were getting from motorists yesterday shows very clearly that actually, the locals aren't behind this. And I take my hat off to the local members of the Taxpayers Union that have made this possible.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Jordan Williams from the Taxpayers Union there, talking about the statue that has been erected just outside of Rotorua and criticising the money that's been put into this project. Following what you've just heard now, I would like to take your calls on 0800 844 747. What do you think of government and local bodies spending like this? Has everything changed since COVID? And do we need to put a hold on art projects like this, or is the art sector basically something that's going to be soaking up too much money? Has it always been a waste of money, and are you waking up to this kind of spending a bit more now since COVID? Maybe this kind of spending has always frustrated you. Maybe it hasn't. I'd like to hear from you on 0800 844 747. Maybe you back this. Maybe you support this kind of spending in our local body and you think that these are sound investments. I'd love to hear from you soon as well. Up next, so we are going to be talking to the Rotorua Mayor Steve Chadwick and get her side of things as well. So get your calls through and we'll be talking to Steve Chadwick, the Mayor of Rotorua, next on Magic Talk. You're on Magic Talk with Oscar today. Right now we are talking about a statue/sculpture that has gone up on State Highway 5 as you go into Rotorua, a $743,000 project that is paid for by the Rotorua Lakes Council, the NZ Today and other local funders as well. We've just had a chat to Jordan Williams from the Taxpayers Union. His stance is basically, and the Taxpayers Union stance is that this is a monumental waste of money. It's over budget, over time, and is not really appropriate in these COVID times. Joining myself on the phone now from Rotorua, the Mayor of Rotorua, Steve Chadwick. Steve, how are you?
Morena, Oscar. I'm great.
Very good. And I guess I'd like to get your general perspective on the situation. What's going on in your mind?
Well, I think it's rather sad, really, a bit of a storm in a teacup, but it is an incredible public artwork that was actually commissioned long before we had residents and ratepayers groups formed, and it was done in conjunction with Te Waka Kotahi, as you do on major transit roads. You'll have seen the fabulous big public sculptures around. This one was commissioned, put out to a competition in 2015. So it's been a really long wait, and it was incredibly exciting when it went into being. And it's turned out to be really complex because it's innovative and groundbreaking, I have to say, and that's what made it take longer. So the design was done by Te Puia, a stunning design depicting the story of geothermal coming to Rotorua. And so beautifully designed. And then when they were actually looking at the construction, they realised that it was much more challenging. So fabulous design, and it was sort of out of the league of what Te Puia could do with stainless steel, which is a product that they were going to use. And in came Kilwell, who are a very innovative company, and said, look, we could 3D print this, and we'll do that. We could do this. We're doing it for lots of our fishing rods and all sorts of innovative techniques used with 3D printing now. So they came to the party, and our cost of council has remained the same. So it's $388,000, no more, no less, and public artworks cost a lot of money. And this one's been done so it's in partnership with Te Waka Kotahi and Te Puia. And I must say, Oscar, when it went up a couple of months ago, we were all incredibly excited. And I've been flooded with people saying it's beautiful and it's lovely. And then some saying, oh, why don't you make it higher? We thought it was going to be a lot higher. But it's based in an underpass, a cycling underpass. And when you walk and cycle through there, you look up and you see this incredible piece of public art, actually. And views on public art, Oscar, differ wildly around the country. But this has been well received, other than 3 councillors at council who don't like the cost. But I don't think they'd like the cost of any public art, actually.
So you said $350,000, and that no more than $388. Sorry, $388. So where is the rest of the money come from?
Ah, right. Well, that's right. You need the full story, and I think because one of the residents and ratepayer councillors has obviously not actually let Jordan know that Te Waka Kotahi have come up with $200,000, Kilwell, Te Puia, the Rotorua Trust have all put in $25,000, Community Arts Foundation, the Lion Foundation, Infinity, Red Stag and the Public Arts Trust. So we've had to go out cap in hand to get more funding for it than it was originally commissioned for, and that was approved by Council fully in 2017 when Kilwell said, look, the original cost that was of the commission work was $500,000. It's going to go out to $743,000. So the increase of $270,000 was approved by council because they wanted to see it finished. Kilwell were 2/3 of the way through this innovation, but our costs to council remained $388,000. So some would say, and I would say in COVID, this would be probably a project that we'd say last year, look, we've got other uses for our funding, but because it began in 2015 and we wanted to see it finished, we all supported finishing this project and that work itself tell its story, Oscar. And it is. So I'm getting, I get some who say, look, it's so super, why don't you move it where it's completely above the ground and we can see its full grandeur. But that's public art. It is always controversial. And it's ironic that those who said it would be a distraction to motorists are the very ones that have commissioned signs on cluttering our roads at rather busy times and roundabouts, saying that they don't like it and actually misrepresenting the full cost. So we've been very open right through about the cost. I'm a real fan of public art, went through a really good process, love the story behind it. So there you are. It's sort of like black and white, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I guess so. I guess where they're coming from is this perspective of, we are essentially, for lack of a better term, we're kind of in wartime, I guess, with COVID going on. And I guess when people hear those figures and they see what they get for it, and we're all very conscious at the moment of public spending, where money is going.
Look, and I would agree. Yeah. I would agree, Oscar, and so are we. But COVID hadn't struck New Zealand. We first experienced it back in March. This was virtually at the point of finishing in March. So you're not going to say to a fabulous design company, hold everything. The money had been expended. It's the only bit left to go, and I think that will give it the wow factor, is the lights. But that's all included in that cost envelope. And yes, it's one of those things in COVID times. Of course, public art's not top priority, but this story began 5 years ago. And it's finished, and people love it. It's in place. And, and there will always be mixed views. In fact, since the story's run, I've had people saying to me, well done for finishing it. We think it's fantastic. So, there's various views here.
And finally, what would you like to say to Jordan and those of the Taxpayers Union, if you could give them sort of one message around this and maybe something that they've missed or misrepresented?
Well, the full costs to ratepayers is $388,000. Don't misrepresent that. I'd rather they didn't clutter our very, very busy roads at the moment with extra signs. In fact, people are finding it quite funny because the signs are now turned off in both Te Waka Kotahi and our regulatory arm are looking at the legitimacy of that signage on a busy roundabout, near a busy roundabout. But you know what I'd really say to them? Have a happy new year. Our council came in well within our budget, which was a stunning year end in this very challenging COVID time, and we're proud of that. We were very prudent, but we did manage to finish this work, and I'm pleased with that.
Very well spoken. Thank you very much, Steve Chadwick, the Mayor of Rotorua. And, wow, it sounds like we've got two accounts, really, two different stories. Maybe some sides don't know exactly what the budgets are working with. It's hard to know, really. That is what Steve is saying for the Mayor of Rotorua. Do you have any thoughts on this? Let me know. Call me 0800 844 747. What are your thoughts on public spending like this? Has your opinion on this changed since COVID? I'd love to get your thoughts on this. We're going to jump into the news now. You're on Magic Talk with Oscar today, and we've just been talking to both the Taxpayers Union and the Mayor of Rotorua about this statue that has gone up just outside of Rotorua on the State Highway 5. It's sort of a giant sculpture, I guess you could call it. I think it's, supposed to be flax. Jordan from the Taxpayers Union likens it more to a pile of flaming money, he thinks. It's $743,000. Let me just double check that I got that right. $743,000 project, which has been paid for by the Rotorua Lakes Council, the NZTA and other local funders. Steve Chadwick, the Rotorua, has just said that $388,000 of that was from ratepayers, and the rest has come semi-privately, I guess, was the point she was getting to. So she thinks that that number is being misrepresented by the Taxpayers Union. I'm asking you on 0800 844 747, what are your thoughts around spending like this? What are your thoughts around spending like this in the art sector and putting up, different statues or sculptures? Some of these things that are going up, are they things that you like? You make the country better to be in, better to look at? Are you feeling like maybe it's worth the investment, or do you think, no, we need to stop spending like this? We need to chill off on just throwing big budgets around because, we're in COVID times now. And I think maybe across public opinion, we've been saying such big numbers, talking in the billions of spending, just as if that's just kind of the way things are, and maybe we need to get a little bit tighter around budgets. Greg has called up on 0800 844 747. Greg, what are your thoughts around this?
Well, firstly, let's go back, and they said they started the project in 2015 and it's finished now. Well, either they're completely incompetent or don't know what they're doing, because it should not take 5 years from concept to finish. That's point one. Point two, what the hell were they doing spending $700,000 5 years ago when my rates went up? I don't even live in Rotorua. I haven't seen the sculpture, but they're spending $700,000 that they didn't have 5 years ago. Now, she can say whatever she likes about where the money came from, indirectly private. Well, NZTA, whoever they're called now, aren't individually private, mate. That's yours and my money. We pay the tax for it. I thought they went to fixing roads and building roads, not bloody sculptures, right? Now, she could put such a lovely positive spin about beautiful this and beautiful that. They're the people that put our rates up 3 times the rate of inflation, 5 times the rate of inflation. Look at what's happening now in Auckland. It's going to be bloody 15%. In Hamilton last year it was 9%. We can't afford it, and yet they frivolously, happily go and throw away $700,000 on something that's totally unnecessary. And you say one thing about the COVID thing and what it costs now, but 5 years ago they couldn't afford it. 5 years ago, $700,000 was like a fortune. That's a lot of money. That's about, probably for the Rotorua District Council, that's probably about 1% rate increase. I just can't understand their mentality. Bureaucrats and people that have never done a day's bloody work in their life, mate, think that they can go and spend yours and my money like it's drunken sailors. You cannot defend $700,000 on that. I'm sorry, you just can't. I have no idea. I have no idea. I haven't seen it, mate, so I can't comment on whether it's a nice piece of art or not. But, you know, in Hamilton, where I live, mate, they spend that much on each roundabout each bloody year. Just putting new flowers in. It's just like criminal.
Where would you like to see that money better spent?
Money better spent. Go and drive down half the roads in the city, mate, with the big potholes in them. You know? Go and see the damage that's done to the roads. Go and have a look at the footpaths that need fixing, that don't get fixed.
Yeah.
You know, that would be one place. I'll tell you where I'd like to see the money. Instead of a 5% rate increase, how about no rate increase for 5 years? You know, and don't waste money on things like that. Let the people that pay the money actually catch up, because they haven't caught up yet. We're well behind the 8 ball. Nobody can afford $3,000-4,000 of rates a year. How about we keep it at that for the next 5 years and don't waste money on crap like that? That's where I'd like to see it spent.
What else do you see as wasted money at the moment, in your mind?
Well, okay. If you look at it like this, in in one of the Nordic countries, they're building a 660-kilometre motorway, and it's got to go through fjords. They're going to build underwater submerged tunnels, and they're going to bridge fjords, and it's going to cost, they say, $38 billion US. That'll probably blow out to double that. We'll call it $70 billion. But hang on a second. The Auckland Harbour crossing, they're telling us the second one's going to cost $10 billion. Well, how can these people build a 660-kilometre road for 38 or even 70 billion, and Auckland can't put an underground tunnel for 10 billion? Where's the money go? Have you heard of the Moulin Bridge in France? Okay, it's the highest bridge in the world. It's higher than the Eiffel Tower, and it's about 3.8 kilometres long. It cost 750 million euros. At that time, when they built it, a new harbour bridge in Auckland was going to be $3 billion. Well, that was a lot more complex than ever's been going to be built in New Zealand, and I have no idea where the money goes. And it frustrates me, mate. You can probably hear it in my voice.
That I can. I had a question for you. Now I've kind of just lost it, which is frustrating me. Yeah, so I guess ultimately, Greg, your position is... Neil, this is what my question was going to be, actually. Do you think it's down to maybe we have some sort of a talent shortage where maybe the people planning and organising these things do not have enough experience to do things to a tighter budget? Or do you think the government is just genuinely doesn't care about how much they're spending?
I think the processes that are in place are not constructive to save money. The processes in place allow too many people to clip the ticket on the way through. Now, I do think we have the talent there, but they don't utilise the talent, because what happens is the people that can make the design work properly take it to the people that make the decisions, the bean counters and the accountants, and they go, no, we have to have a green one, not a red one. But a green one's going to cost $500,000, and a red one that's practical is going to cost $1,000, and they don't look at things like that. I think there's too much of that goes on. There's too much where councils have one supplier only. They can't put it out to tender because it's too expensive, and yet you ask anybody and the councils pay double what everybody else pays.
Do you worry, Greg, that if we do everything as tight budget as possible and we don't allow for a little bit of flair here and there, some flowers on a roundabout or a statue here and there, that we're just going to live in kind of like a really bleak, artless society?
I am honestly, I'm not against all that stuff, mate. That's what I'm so frustrated about. What I'm against is, for the last 10 years, when our infrastructure hasn't been up to scratch and our ability to pay for it is not there, and we pay through the roof as ratepayers and as, for utilities and that, they still waste money on things that could be done once they've got everything else up to speed. Instead of just whacking it on the ratepayer year after year after year, and they still, I have no problem with having the sculpture and the artwork, and I have no problem with $700,000, but guess what? They haven't got $700,000 to do it. So what do? Oh, the ratepayers will pay. Whereas we still need the roads built, we still need the infrastructure built, but they don't do that. They do it twofold. And so I don't really have a problem, but for the last 10 or 15 years, it's not been affordable. And so something's got to give. So what happens? The ratepayer pays. That's where I'm coming from. Yeah, I don't have roundabout's a great thing, a nice thing, but do we really need to spend $500,000 a year on it, sort of thing? And yeah, the sculpture's a lovely thing, but for the last 10 years, we can't really afford $700,000 for that sculpture. Right? If you want the sculpture and you're really desperate for it, go out and get private sponsorship to do it. We'll put in 5%, not 60%, That's what I think.
If you could say anything to the Taxpayers Union that are shining a light on this kind of spending, what would you like to say to them?
Well, I think they need to approach things a little bit differently as well. There are ways to get into the council's way of thinking. I think one of the big problems is that the councillors and the mayor don't run the city anymore. The CEOs run the city. And I think if they were going to pursue getting rid of the CEOs that run the city and make all the decisions and put it back in council's favour. Because the CEO basically dictates what happens. And a classic example of that is when the local body elections came last time. This is where the Ratepayers Union could be productive. Tauranga City had a meet the mayor or meet the candidates, and Peter Williams ran it, and it cost nothing. Hamilton City Council had one, and it cost $15,000. Now, that's where the Ratepayers Union get into the councils a lot and say, hey guys, we need to stop this frivolous spending. We need you guys to suck it up a bit. And then they might not complain so much about spending money on sculptures that aren't necessary.
And if you could say anything to maybe the mayor of Rotorua, I don't know. Did you hear her call?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Yeah. What do you have any response to what she was saying?
Yeah, I'd say look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. You haven't got the money. You can't afford it. You're throwing money away on things that aren't necessary, I genuinely think that. I mean, okay, it started 5 years ago, but things were no better 5 years ago. Rates were still going up double the rate of inflation. Until they can get those rates down to single figures increases, don't waste your money on things, and especially not $700,000 or $800,000. And yeah, they always come up with the excuse we're only paying half. Well, $380,000, $400,000 from ratepayers is a lot of money. Perhaps that $400,000 could fund kids' sport in the town for the next 10 years. I don't know. Better ways to spend it than that.
Thank you very much for your call, Greg. I really do appreciate your time calling up and getting fired up about public spending and what's happening. And this is, of course, off the back of Stuin Rotorua of a sculpture going up for around the $743. It's always on my other page. I need to check it. Yeah, $743,000. The Mayor Steve Chadwick says that only $388 of that is actually getting paid for by the public. Where that money comes from, though, look, it sounds like it's just a giant turnstop of different funding, and where that all comes from, it's kind of hard to follow the pipelines. I'll read a few of your texts on this as well. Hi, Oscar. Regarding taxpayer money being allocated for artwork, there's always seems to be a lot of anger in the community when money is spent in this area. We do need appealing draw cards in our towns and cities to make us feel proud where we live, to entertain tourists. But budget-wise, essentials should take priority over artwork because they keep the towns and cities functioning at their best level. That's from Sonia. Thank you for texting that through, Sonia. Who else have we got? From Blair, as your caller is saying, too many people got their fingers in the pie. Who else have we got? This is the tip of the iceberg. The parliamentary slide, $572,000, and it is barely used. A stainless steel slide which burns children in the summer. Not well thought out at all. Just a few of your texts that have been coming through around this topic as well. Up next, I think we'll switch over. Actually, I'm going to have a chat with another broadcaster, a lady named Jen Bainbridge, who works on The Rock, and she talks about some of the debt that she fell into. Speaking of, economics and spending, her own spending habits, where she kind of fell into a lot of credit card debt, and the mindset that she's had to take on to get herself out of that. And I think that's really important things to hear, especially as we continue through COVID and have to deal, each of us on our own personal finances. I'm going to have a chat with her next on Magic Talk.